Everyone told us that Paris would be a nightmare with my young son and his grandparents. Well, they were wrong. In fact, I want to beg you to ignore the warnings and take your family to Paris. I believe that Paris is perhaps the perfect city to visit in Europe. If you think that Paris is just about couples and fine dining, well, it's got so much more to offer than just that. In this video, I'm going to get into why I love taking my family to Paris. I'm going to talk about places to stay. I'm even going to go over the perfect day in Paris. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on there. Did I just say that Paris is the perfect city to visit with your family? That sounds like something that would be written by AI. That can't possibly be true. Haven't you heard all the stereotypes of Parisians? Parisians are supposed to be cold, unfriendly, and just downright mean. A little bit later in this video, I want to talk about a secret that you need to know before visiting Paris that will make it so that Parisians are warm and welcoming to you and your family. But first, I think I should talk more about my experience and who I am and the times that I've taken my family to Europe, because I think that'll help you really understand why it's very possible for you to plan your next vacation. My wife and I have actually visited Paris 3 times already, and we are absolutely in love with this city. It's a city that's built for people. What's so wonderful about Paris is that it's extremely walkable, and the historic architecture is built to a human scale. So when you're walking through this city, it feels livable, it feels alive, it feels real. It also has absolute world-class museums, and it has parks sprinkled throughout the city. And then best of all, there's also wonderful, absolutely magical carousels. This summer, we're planning to bring my family back to Paris, and we're so looking forward to getting on those carousels. So, if you've stuck around this long, I'm guessing you might be either actively planning a trip to Paris or you're very interested. By the end of this video, I want to make sure that you can actually start taking action. So I'm going to talk about the optimal number of days that I think you should stay in Paris for. I'm going to talk about great locations within the city that you should look to book your accommodation. I'm also going to revisit that secret of how to actually get good service. I'm also going to go over a perfect day in Paris. I'll walk you through one of the days that my family planned, and then you'd be able to take that, copy it, and do the exact same thing. First, I'm going to talk about the airport. And what's wonderful about Paris is you can often fly direct from your home city into Paris. When you're traveling with kids and grandparents, I can't say enough good things about trying to book a direct flight into Paris. And the other great thing about the Paris airport is it's very easy to get from the airport into the city. You can either book a taxi that'll take you directly there, or you can hop on public transportation, which with a family, I think can be maybe a little more difficult. Oh, by the way, comment down below if you'd like me to put together a video on how to survive a long-haul flight with kids. The next logistical piece that I think we really need to talk about is the number of days that you need to plan for your trip to Paris. If you've watched my past videos, you'll know that I'm all about slow travel. I'm really focused on connection over checklists, and I think that Paris is one of those cities that you really need to make sure you slow down in. So to me, an ideal length of time is going to be maybe 4, 5, 6, even 7 days. I'm really curious to know, what do you think is the optimal time to stay in Paris? How many days do you typically try to stay? If you could, comment down below with the number of days that you feel like is necessary to visit this beautiful city. If you're planning a family trip to Paris, you're obviously going to need to look at where to stay within this large city. I don't want to shock you, but Paris is a very expensive city to stay in. And one mistake that I see families make far too often is they try to book accommodations that are cheaper, that are just way too far from the city center. A rule of thumb that I always try to work with is I try to be as close to the Seine River as I can. So typically I'll find accommodations, I'll look on Google Maps, and if it's within 20 to 30 minute walk of the Seine River, I think that's a pretty decent location. The closer to the river, the better. don't cheap out. Don't go for the less expensive places that are far outside the city, because then you and your kids and the grandparents are going to spend an hour just commuting into the city to be in the parts of the city that you really want to visit. Paris is made up of arrondissements, and those spiral out from the center. So the lower numbers are typically going to be closer to the river. Each of these arrondissements has its own character and its own flavor. And when I've stayed there, I've stayed in 3 different ones, and to be honest, I've loved them all. They've all been fantastic. In fact, if you're interested in where to stay in Paris, I'd love it if you could comment down below, maybe say Paris location video, and I'll look to put one together specifically focused on where to stay in Paris. In this video though, I do want to make sure I give you good information so you can start planning that trip today. One thing that I think about is there a specific museum that you know you want to visit? Well, that might be a good place to start looking for accommodations near that museum. Is there a certain area that you definitely want to be in and visit? Start focusing there. So up next, I really wanted to dive into my experience of where I've stayed in Paris and what each of my last 3 visits to Paris looked like. Our first trip to Paris was before we had kids. We stayed in the heart of the city with views of Notre Dame right out our apartment window. We were staying in the Latin Quarter in the 6th arrondissement on the left bank. We spent 4 carefree days exploring the museums, walking along the Seine, eating amazing food. We hopped on and off the metro with ease, and this first trip is where we really fell in love with Paris. The city has a pulse and an energy that's hard to describe until you visited it. It really does live up to the hype. My second trip to Paris is where everything changed for me. This is the trip that I brought my son on, my wife on, and my wife's parents on. We had such an amazing trip, and it's actually why I'm begging you to take your family to Paris. Specifically on this trip, we decided to stay a little bit more outside of the main central location of Paris. We actually stayed in the 10th arrondissement near Porte Saint-Denis, and it was on the right bank. So this is more of a working class neighborhood, but it was a wonderful place to stay with our family. The Airbnbs were slightly more affordable, but still everything was so connected. We had boulangeries, those are places you can buy these delicious pastries. There were grocery stores nearby, and there were wonderful restaurants in this area. And from there, we could actually walk down to the Seine in about 30 minutes. So this was another great location. So my family's third stop in Paris was actually on this same France 2024 trip, but we ended our trip back in Paris. So this allowed us to fly into Paris and fly out of Paris. And we decided to stay right next to the Eiffel Tower. On this trip, we were staying in the 7th arrondissement. This is a beautiful historic area. It is very touristy, but we actually didn't mind that at all. And we really enjoyed being there. Part of the highlight of staying there is the pedestrian-only street Rue Claire. You can walk, see the historic buildings, and it's a place where you can pick up all those picnic supplies and take for a picnic over to the Champ de Mars. That's the big park that's right below the Eiffel Tower. And another great thing for kids there is there's actually 2 wonderful playgrounds right in the park, and you're playing at a playground, your kids are sliding down the slides, and you're looking up to the Eiffel Tower. If you've made it this far in the video, you can tell that I'm a big fan of Paris, and so much so that this summer we're planning to go back to Paris with my wife, my son, and her parents. And this time around, we're choosing to stay in the 15th arrondissement on the left bank. And we're really excited to stay in this new area. From what I've read, this area has a lot of locals. We've already booked our Airbnb, and after booking that Airbnb, I've been having a lot of fun exploring on Google Maps, and I've already found a local park nearby, a slightly larger park that has a carousel about 10 minutes away from our Airbnb. I found a local boulangerie, and I'm just so excited to get back to Paris this summer and experience the Parisian lifestyle. There's a couple of things that I'm always looking for in a good accommodation in Paris, and I want to make sure that those are located close to a boulangerie. These are places that you can buy those delicious French pastries. I also want to make sure it's close to a local grocery store, and then also in Paris you're going to find that there's fruit stands. There's going to be these businesses that just sell local produce, and I love to have those areas near me because that's going to allow my family to be able to send someone out in the morning. They can quickly stop at the boulangerie, they can stop at the grocery store, and they can stop at the fruit stand, and voila, we've got a wonderful French breakfast that we can bring back to the Airbnb, eat there as a family before we set out on our day. So I wanted to go ahead and circle back to something I mentioned earlier, and that was talking about that stereotype of the French being cold, distant, and unwelcoming to tourists. Well, one thing that you need to know is every time you walk into a shop, a restaurant, or any place of business, the first thing you're going to want to say to the shop owner is Bonjour, which means hello in French. What that's going to do is set the cultural norm. That's what the French people do. Anytime they walk into a shop, that's the first thing they'll say, Bonjour. And that is going to make it so that the French are suddenly going to go from being cold and distant to being friendly and welcoming. In fact, for my family, all the shops that we've gone to, all the restaurants we've gone to, we found the French to be just absolutely wonderful. And as long as you're making an effort to speak some of their language, that goes a really long way. In fact, for my upcoming trip, I've actually been studying some French language using the Duolingo app, and I've really enjoyed learning how to say simple phrases like hello, goodbye, thank you, how are you, things like that. If you can learn how to say a few of those phrases before you head off on your trip, it's going to make the locals so much nicer and welcoming to you. If you're still watching at this point of the video, I just wanted to personally say thank you. Your support means so much to me, and I really hope that you're able to take what you're learning in this video and apply it directly to your next trip to Paris. I hope you're able to use this information to arm yourself and make yourself feel ready to take your family on a dream trip to France. And if you'd be so kind, it would mean the world to me if you could like this video and hit the subscribe button to my channel below for more tips like this. So up next, I'm going to share a perfect day in Paris. This was a day that we actually planned and went on with my family. So that's what I'll talk about next. On my last trip to Paris, one of the best days we had was actually the day we chose to visit Montmartre and Sacré-Cœur up on the hill above Paris. When you visit this area of Paris, you get this commanding view of all of Paris down below you. Our day started by sending someone out to get pastries at the local boulangerie. We hopped on a local bus, took that up to the base of Montmartre. Right there at the base, there's actually a wonderful carousel that just makes any kid's eyes light up. My son hopped on. It was actually his first carousel ride in his life. Right next to the carousel, there's a playground. We took the time to make sure we were using slow travel to really slow down and live in the moment. From there, you can take a funicular up to the top, and then you just get this commanding view of Paris, overlooking the whole city, the steps leading up to Sacré-Cœur. After that, we grabbed some lunch. We found a local cafe utilizing Google Maps that was just a little bit off of the main square. And from there, the rest of our day was really focused on just exploring up there on the hill above the city. What we found right away after our cafe stop was this wonderful playground. It was tucked away in these historic buildings, and it was just a wonderful time where my wife, my son, and I just got to be there as a family. And that was the beauty of it all. That was what made the slow travel philosophy that we use when we visit Europe just such a great thing. We connected, and we had really just a wonderful day visiting Montmartre. So that's something that I think that everybody should do when they visit Paris, and it's something that's so easy to plan, and I hope on your next trip to Paris that you consider that for one of your days. Well, that's about all I have for you today, and I really hope that this video has helped inspire you, encourage you to plan your next trip to Paris. This video is actually going to be a two-part series. This is part one, After this, I'm going to go ahead and make a video on 3 perfect days of really more detailed, specific itinerary for how you can visit Paris with your family. If that's something that sounds good to you, comment down below 3-day itinerary, and I'll make sure to get that video up soon. So thanks so much for watching, and I was going to sign off with a new tagline today, which is actually a quote that I tell to my son every day. It's a Ram Dass quote, which is, "Be kind and love everyone." Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.